Hi there! I wanted to share some pages with you that I did in Load Layout a Day that I have not done process videos for. I did a lot of pages in February and I just couldn't get videos done on everything for the month, so I thought it would be good to share a few of the pages and tell you a little bit about the challenges that we were doing and how the page adapted to that particular challenge, and maybe some of the stories behind them. For this first one, you'll see it's a no photo page. It really didn't start out with that intention. The challenge that day was to do our process perhaps in a little different order than we normally did it. And we have some different steps to the process, and we had a way of randomly choosing them and doing them in that order. And the first thing I picked was paper. And I had this paper from Crepe Paper called Acre and Avenue. I have the 12 by 12, I have the 6 by 6, I have die cuts, I have a lot of stuff in that collection. One of my goals with Load was to move some stuff out of my stash, so I wanted to use up some of this, and I picked some of the paper. Then the next thing I picked was embellishments, so I picked a lot of the embellishments plus a few extra things. I realized I was building a fall page. However, I knew I didn't have a lot of fall photos, and the next thing I drew was stories. So how am I going to tell a story if I don't have a photo and it's about fall? And one of the reasons we don't have a lot of fall photos anymore, and the ones I have from last year I'd already scrapped, the reasons we don't have them is we don't do as much hiking. For one reason or another, either an issue with my husband or an issue with me that keeps us from getting out and walking on that uneven ground and climbing hills and things that we used to do. And I missed that. And I realized that that was my story. So this is a little bit more of an art journal kind of subject because I did a lot of journaling here. And there isn't a photo, so since I don't have one for it. So I really liked doing the page because it made me realize how important that was to me and how I want to try to get back to doing some of those kinds of things this year, spring, fall, whenever, even if we can't maybe hike as far or go places that we normally go. So anyway, it was a good page in that respect. To show you some of the details, one of the things that I did early on was, after I put my papers down, was add some stenciling of some leaves, and my intention was to do a row of leaves along the bottom. But when I did my title, I ended up leaving some extra space up here that I needed to fill. So I put some leaves up there, and that created the need for another cluster of embellishment down here, and then I had this open space down at the bottom, so I added one of the stickers from the collection and just a row or a little strip of pattern paper. Now this layout is one that, and all these have been on my blog. This is about when I wrote the sketchbook. I realized after I wrote it that, or I published it, and I published it, to publish the collection of sketches, that I published a book. And it had always been one of my dreams to write a book, but I had envisioned it being fiction, and that's not really my gift. And I've realized over the years, and I haven't worked that hard at it either, so it was more of a wish than a real plan during my life. But nonetheless, I had published something, so I wanted to celebrate that. And I knew I was going to do a page about this sometime during Load, so even before Load started, I started prepping some papers for this. Because the photo, I'm dressed in blue, I've got a blue background. Blue is a tough color to find in scrapbooking, and I knew I didn't have any designer papers in blue. I did have some cardstock, and I utilized a technique from the creative cardstock class to make that a little more interesting. But as for designer paper, I had to come up with a way to create the designer paper. And as I say, I started filming the steps I was doing, but I had some very mixed results. So one of these days, I'll get a better handle on how to take designer paper and transform the color just with some stamps and misting and things, and get a better, more consistent result and do a video on that. But in the meantime, I have the completed page here where I have some papers that I was successful in getting the colors the way that I wanted them to be. So I used quite a bit of designer paper just with a lot of inks and mists, because I did have those in the blue color. This stamping down here on the white cardstock background was done with just a single stamp that I repeated over and over again. And I even used some of my die cut paper as part of my embellishments for the page. So I was really pleased with this page. Some of these you're going to see in this video I really liked, and some were not my favorites, but I even had a little thing. This is from Maya Road, where it has like a book checkout thing, so I thought that was really cute. And the Live Your Dreams, that sticker was a different color, and I transformed the color. I do have a successful process for that, and that is in my latest class called 2-Page Terrific. Now this is one of the pages that I wasn't super excited about. I love the photo of my husband. I love the background paper. I think the problem with it was I don't have enough of this blocked out, and I've tried to focus too much on the background paper. That was part of the challenge, was it was to have somebody else help you pick the things that you used, and I had my husband look at my Pinterest boards and pick out some different people's layouts and what he liked about them. And somebody had done a layout where they'd done a background paper that had words all over it. It wasn't this one, it was a much more muted one, but when I went to my stash, this is the one I had, and it was just perfect for a picture of him because it has the words carefree, and what ran across the middle was laid back and blissful, and he's just this relaxed person who doesn't worry about things. So it was a wonderful paper for him, and I was so concerned about keeping the background showing that it's kind of overwhelmed the page, in my opinion. I think if I'd matted the photo or put something behind these banners, which was another thing he liked in somebody's page. And one thing I do think was really successful is putting the washi tape behind the title to make that show up. I got that from Sue Althouse's blog, one of her pages that he liked. So anyway, it was an interesting exercise, and I do love the photo of him. Now, I can't remember exactly what this challenge was for. I think this was the one where we would use a photo that we had used before. And I used a photo of myself that I took just a couple of months ago and focused on my upcoming big birthday. I used a technique from Celine Navarro at 2 Peas in a Bucket, where she took, in her case, letters, and I did numbers. And these are old thickers. You know, you get all these numbers, and I don't use the numbers very much. You put them on a paper, on a piece of cardstock, and you go over the whole thing with gesso, and then you add mist, and that was her technique. And it worked really well. The only thing that you have to worry about with mist in doing this kind of thing is that mists are water soluble, and so you put down like blues and green mist and you come back with some red, it's going to reactivate. And you might, if you put down blue and yellow mist, and or blue mist and you add a yellow mist, it might turn to green, because that's just the way colors do. Or if you put colors on the opposite side of the color wheel, they may turn out muddy, and that's what a few of mine did. So I ended up with a little more pink here than I really had planned. It kind of took over the look, but it was still kind of a fun page to do. I enjoyed doing it. The stamping is actually done with a piece of drawer liner from the dollar store that does a great job as a stencil and as a stamp, and I used black paint. And then these snowflakes are some Maya Road ones that I had from left from another project. And there's a ton of journaling in here, and the way the pocket works is I can just reach in from the top and pull that out anytime that I want to read that journaling. It'll probably be one of those things I read years from now to see, maybe the next big birthday I have, to see what my apprehensions were about turning 50, and I'll probably laugh it off and think, oh my gosh, wish I were that age again. And this is the last page to share with you today, and it's one of my absolute favorite from the whole class, or from the whole load program. We were challenged to go and find the oldest product in our stash and use it on a page. Everything on this page is old except the photo and the little wood veneer pieces. Everything else is old stuff. The oldest thing on here is actually not scrapbooking product. It's this embroidery floss. The DMC embroidery floss I started collecting in the 70s, and I did a lot of cross stitches, a lot of us did back in the 70s and the 80s. This particular little thread is candle wicking yarn. If you know what candle wicking is, I did one candle wicking project and that was it. But I still had the thread, and so I've got some very old stuff there. And then the rest of it is just old scrapbooking stuff that goes all the way back to about 2000, 2001. There's some zig markers on here that I know go back to around 2000, 2001. The mulberry paper probably dates deviates from that background. And I was really tickled with this mulberry paper. It's a real stiff paper, and it did a beautiful background. I don't think I'd ever tried that before. The chipboard letters came from Oriental Trading. I would say 8 to 10 years ago, maybe. So long ago that they don't send me catalogs anymore. And I used a technique from Two Peas in a Bucket from Wilna Furstenberg's art class with gesso and watercolors to get my colors for those, and then I outlined them, some of them, in the Zig markers to make them show up a little bit more. The love word in the back are some gigantic die cuts that I got, and it's like one of those what was I thinking sort of products. It's like, how do I use those great big letters? So I've used them here. And then also with this chipboard, I had some chipboard from Oriental Trading where I'd used practically everything on the sheet, but I still had the sheet, and I used it as a stencil to do this border down here. So I laid the chipboard down and I filled it in with what's the stuff? Modeling paste. Yeah, filled it in with modeling paste and let that dry, and then I went over it with a little bit of mist that I painted on. So this page, it took a lot of time to do. I think I did this one the day after we did the really short, like 30-minute page. This one took hours to do, but it was so much fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I didn't try to film it, as I said, because it was a rather lengthy page, but I really enjoyed making it. So thank you so much for watching. And taking a look at my pages from the Load program. I really enjoyed Load. I got a lot of pages, topics that I just wouldn't have probably captured, or maybe not captured for a long time. And I got to try some things that I wouldn't have tried. I ended up doing 2 pages without photos, and I've done that before, but I don't do it very often. And it's a good thing to do sometimes because you don't always have photos. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll check out some of my other videos.